Hello and welcome to week 4 of Introduction to Diversity. Okay, again this week, when you guys open up week 4 due, you'll see what's due. So you guys are going to watch this video. We're watching it right now. You're going to submit your initial discussion for response by Friday and then respond to 2 other students by Sunday. And then complete quiz 4 by Sunday. Okay, and again, the midterm essay is coming up and you have that final project. So start thinking of a topic you'd like to either do for both and just expand on it, or if you want to choose 2 separate topics, things that you're really interested in and that maybe is even in your field, we can absolutely relate it to diversity. Let me know what you guys are thinking. I believe it's next week that we have to sign up, so we'll do that. Okay, great. So for this week, we're going to be doing the immigration lecture. Here we go. We'll start this. Immigration is a hot topic right now, obviously. It's definitely discussed much in politics, and this has happened many times before. It's not the first time that immigration is discussed. It's discussed in all countries across the globe, and then especially here in the US. Okay, here we go. Patterns of immigration. So again, what are the patterns of immigration? What are the waves of immigration? How has that operated? How has that functioned? Okay. So the number of immigrants has changed over time. Sometimes you have an influx, sometimes it's very few, and if you look back on human history, you'll see those big times, okay? The settlement also is not uniform across the US. Again, people tend to end up in the coasts and the major cities. The countries of origin has changed over time. Historically, prior to the 1940s, immigrants were primarily from Europe, and since then they're primarily from Asia and Latin America. In the US, demography-wise, demographical, sorry, having so much fun playing with words. It's one of my favorite things of being a professor. Looking at demographic variables such as the composition of the US, 14% are foreign-born compared to 4.7% in 1979. So you can see over the last 30 and 40 years, you've had almost triple the amount of foreign-born people living in the United States. However, you have to ask, is that a good thing or a bad thing? And that's what we're about to discuss. 45% of the immigrants reside in California, New York, Florida, and New Jersey. Hence this idea that settlement is not uniform across the US. All right. Regarding the Chinese, which then got expanded to all of Asians, and this is where a lot of negative stereotypes came from, for example. So in the 1850s, you had a mass migration of Chinese. 200,000 came over, and they started working on the railroads, okay, taking lower class jobs. This idea of the fear of Chinese is this word called xenophobes, okay? So because of the fear of Chinese and negative stereotypes, in 1882 and 1892, they socially constructed the Chinese Exclusion Act, okay? And this outlawed all Chinese immigration for 10 years and completely stripped them of their citizenship rights, okay? This is a big thing because the Chinese are the only ones who have ever had their citizenship rights stripped from them. And then this idea of discrimination against the Chinese then eventually gets expanded to all Asians, okay? And plus this idea of 10 years, this then gets expanded for another 50. And it's really not until the 1930s that we begin to reduce our negative discriminatory policies toward Asian immigration. Okay, and then there's this comment on the bottom. In 2012, Congress apologized to the Chinese. And what we have to realize that throughout American history, many atrocities, things that can be argued as atrocities depending on your point of view, have occurred against specific groups of people, okay? And our Congress has apologized for that. We've apologized to the Chinese, we've apologized for slavery, we've apologized for interning Japanese Americans, we apologized for overthrowing the Native Hawaiian rule and imposing U.S. rule over the islands, okay? So there's this history of the U.S. owning up to past incidents and taking a stance on this. Okay. Restrictionist sentiment increases over the last 100 years. In 1921, the national origin system blocked Southern Europeans and Asians with a quota system. And here's where you really start to see anti-immigration sentiment beyond the Chinese, okay? It extended to Southern Europeans also. And you have a lot of negative stereotypes during that time attached to this, you know, and that's just, you know, if you kind of watch movies like The Gangs of New York and things, you can see what it really took to be accepted in America, which is why I put that in one of your quiz questions. Okay, by the end of the 1920s, immigration had reduced by three-quarters. I mean, we essentially stopped immigration. And so the Ellis Island stories, and, you know, my family also, our name is there. We came over a little bit before then, but that's when immigration starts to decrease. However, then in 1965, we reopened our borders to Latin America and Southern Europe again with the Immigration and Nationality Act. Okay, in 1981, 83% of immigrants from Asia came from Latin America. Okay, from 1881 to the present. So, whereas, you know, prior to the 1920s, you saw a lot of Europeans coming over, and then when we kind of reopened in the 1960s, this is when you see a lot of Asians and Latin Americans coming over again. And then to kind of put a slight reductionist on this, in 1986, the Immigration and Reform and Control Act reduced immigration. But again, you got to ask big questions like what kind of effect does immigration policies have on the economy, for example? Because if you reduce immigration, you're reducing your economic potential because immigration increases the GDP of countries. So, things to be thinking about. Why do we have these negative economic policies and negative government policies when we should be encouraging people to come over because that kind of builds the wealth of the United States, essentially, especially when you're about to see a global downturn in population because people are not having more than two children in modern times. China, for example, in 4 years, their population is going to end. That's it. Like it's going to go down and start decreasing. They're going to be begging for immigrants. Otherwise, their economy is going to be hampered. Immigration accounted for 55% of U.S. population growth from 65 to 2015. And again, population growth equals economic growth. So maybe you should ask questions like, why is our economy even strong? Is it because of our change in economic or immigration policies? Immigrants are a net economic gain for the population in times of boom and bust. No matter what, immigration increases economic gain. However, you have this argument that they take people's jobs. The only jobs they're taking are the lowest of the lower class jobs. Okay? So, yes, the people that are competing for the lowest social role occupations in society, arguably based upon the prestige attached to that job, the amount of wealth you acquire attached to that job, the amount of workload attached to that job, responsibility, etc. Those are the jobs that are being competed with when it comes to immigrants. Okay, it takes an immigrant, you know, a generation or two just to be able to build capital and work their way up as long as they don't experience discrimination that stops them from being able to build capital. Okay? So, in modern times, what you're seeing is the percentage of the United States is 3.4% illegal immigrants. Okay, 3.4%. It's an insignificant number of people. Why is it such a major political policy? So these are questions you should be asking. Okay, yes, it's up almost three times what it was in 1990, but do we need to maybe find a way for people to enter our country so that we can enable economic growth, for example? Why are we allowing people to be illegal? Is there a better process for getting people into the country? Do we need more people? A lot of good questions on immigration should be asked. Okay, the naturalization process. To gain citizenship, you must be 18, reside in the US for 5 years, have good moral character, be able to read, write, and speak English, and pass a US government test orally in English. It's an honor. Thank you again so much. Please email me with questions. I hope you guys are liking the challenging content, and I hope you're having a chance to do some creative writing and really think about some of these issues. It's an honor. See you guys soon. Call with any questions.